This Fed Gov Today program is sponsored by ManTech and Carasoft. On this edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose, an international approach to R&D for the Pentagon. Data takes center stage for the special operations community. And DoD's small business strategy aims to drive faster solutions. Welcome to Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. The Defense Department's working with 5 international partners to co-fund research and development projects. That work is happening in the Irregular Warfare Technical Support Directorate. Robert Newberry is director of the Directorate. At Soft Week in Tampa, he tells me how those relationships work.
We've got unique memorandums with 5 countries, Canada, Australia, the UK, Singapore, and Israel. They're research and development MOUs, so we can do research and development projects co-funded between the countries and ourselves. They're bilateral. And it has to be mutually beneficial technology, so it should benefit each partner. There are some projects we may end up with 3 partners signed in, but we have to have legally where each partner is contributing to a separate part of the whole, but they'll all get the whole when it's completed. They're unique in the department. Normally, the department working with foreign partners, international allies, do project agreements. They take often a year and a half to 2 years to come to fruition. Our MOUs can take a year plus to develop, but once they're developed, all our projects are under what we call task plans. So the task plans are non-binding, signed by my counterpart and myself and the project managers. And we can do a task plan agreement with a foreign partner in sometimes as little as a week or 2, normally maybe 4 to 6 weeks. And we're off and running. So a lot of other Department of Defense people, organization will come in and ask for us to do task plans to develop projects that are beneficial to the defense agency or our military users. We have to be careful if there's already project agreements in play. What we can do is help the service or the organization jumpstart it. In other words, while they're taking a year or 2 to finalize project agreement, we can jumpstart it so the work can start now. Like I said, it's unique in the department. Nobody has that except our organization. There's several countries that want to join in as well. The workload's heavy. We have about, in IWTSD, we're doing about 253 projects annually. 179 of those projects have international partners tied to them, so they've contributed either with money or subject matter expertise or something they've already been developing. But the workload is heavy, and we meet with each international partner in a large bilateral meeting twice a year. So they'll host in their country once, and 6 months later we'll host in our country, and we'll rotate that. Well, you can imagine 5 partners twice a year, that's 10 meetings a year that we have to put together, in addition to all the rest of the work we're doing. So other countries coming in, a few I won't mention, but that would bring the number up 6, 7, and more. We would have to look at maybe tailoring our work where the other country is most interested in, or where we think we can get the most benefit from, and not necessarily meet twice a year with every country.
I want to ask you about the technologies. You said you're working on mutually beneficial technology. Do most of those ideas come from the United States? Do most of those ideas come from partners and the United States realizes the benefits of them? What does that kind of breakdown look like?
It depends on the technology. Singapore is really big on advanced analytics, IT type technology. Israel, across the board, they're a heavy technology organization. The UK is probably the next, where we're involved with them a lot. Then Canada, a lot in chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear explosive detection and identification. We have a really strong partnership now with them as in the last 2 to 3 years in tactical offensive support. So weapons technology, loitering munitions, that type of thing, lethal drones, robotics. Australia also kind of a smaller partnership. A lot of it involves how much money they have to invest. I would say a lot of it is U.S. technology driven, and then they want to buy into it. With Israel, it's their technology, and they do a lot of good technology because they've been fighting for decades.
Yeah.
So we benefit from them. What we've done with them now is encourage them and more to develop manufacturing in the U.S.
Yeah.
So their companies may have the development, if it's weapons or certain things, we have to make it, we have to Americanize it. Our warheads, safety, meet all our safety parameters and stuff.
Yeah.
And then what we want to do is have manufacturing set up in the U.S.
We just have a couple of minutes left. When you get something that everybody likes and that you want to move forward, what are some of the challenges that you've run into in moving something from prototype to production?
There's what's called the Valley of Death.
Yeah, talking about that a lot on this.
So a lot of the services and working with SOCOM, they have to work a 5-year budget plan. But when you come up with new technology that somebody wants, they haven't developed that 5-year plan, and so it's a gap. And we have to either continue funding it, or we have to find a way where they can buy a small number. We'll put things on a DLA catalog, GSA catalog, and stuff. We buy lots of prototypes so we can have lots of users try them, and we train them so they know what they're doing. And really the marketing is from the ground up, not from the top down.
Yeah.
So there is that part of getting requirements or capability gaps from the bottom and matching that with what the headquarters thinks the capability gaps are.
Yeah.
And so making that tie is important. And we work with small businesses, so having them transition and be able to partner with manufacturing companies where they can actually produce and sell at an affordable cost, because that's the other thing we want, rapid and affordable cost.
You can read more about those memoranda of understanding on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, data takes center stage for the special operations community. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Here's Conrad Maiorino, cybersecurity mission engineer at Zscaler, on innovation in government from Sea Air Space, presented by Carasoft.
I think the DoD should follow their pillars, if you will, of zero trust, whether it's user, device, network, application, automation, visibility, analytics, and build what I like to call a cyber radar, or getting left of boom, if you will. When you understand this kind of data and putting it in place, as we said, you would understand the caliber of the load to take the adversary out, because you could see what's coming. That's where the DoD, in my opinion, needs to go, and I think they are going in that path. I think you're talking about a huge ship in a pond, if you will, and we got to turn that ship around. It's not as easy as everyone thinks.
For more, go to innovationingov.com. Welcome back. Data delivery, data analysis, and data security are three of the biggest themes the special operations community discussed at SOF Week this week in Tampa. Commander Julie Vida, U.S. Navy, retired as Vice President for Defense Growth at ManTech. She's former Deputy Chief Information Officer of the Navy. At SOF Week, I asked her about the differences between securing data in a special operations environment and other types of military environments.
I think the biggest one, honestly, is the likelihood of special operations forces operating in a contested environment, a distributed, denied environment, or purely out on their own tip of the spear. That's what they do. And so when you add that kind of environment environmental challenge to cyber resilience and kind of cybersecurity, it significantly ups the game in how resilient the systems need to be, and the capability of keeping all the communications and the C2 to keep the troops safe, to keep the special operators safe, keep the mission on time, on target, without the bad guys knowing about it. Very, very, very different from an environment where people are generally connected until the time and place of their choosing when they don't want to be.
Would it be fair to say that the operative phrase in what you just described is without the bad guys knowing about it? Because that obviously kills the whole operation.
That's exactly it. And these days we know that bad guys take a lot of forms. It's not necessarily just the guys on the other side of the hill with, kinetic weapons in their hand. It's the malactors. It's the misinformation going into the systems that might be feeding the operation. It is people doing it for money, people doing it for sport, people doing it for politics, from everywhere. And, we're all living that in the world. But when you think about the applications to special operations, it's quite frightening. It's also encouraging to see, we were talking earlier about the displays here, the demonstrations, the patriotism, the bravery. It's like nothing else. And it gives me a lot of really good, I feel really good about our special operators being able to overcome any of those challenges. And whether they're in the cyber domain or the kinetic domain.
Another difference that it strikes me may be in place in a situation like this is that the organization detecting movement or operations might not necessarily be the adversary that operation is aimed at.
Yes.
Because of the way the landscape looks today. What's the implication for that in the way that one thinks about cyber resilience?
Again, I think it just ups the game significantly to a point where, because this is new for the world. I'm not saying for special ops that they haven't been training for, contested cyber environment for years, but the world is just getting our hands around how bad things can go. If bad actors get into critical infrastructure, if they can get into communications, if they can get into satellites. And so it just escalates all the challenges. And it's added a whole new layer of training and capability and expertise that has not been part of the DNA of really the whole military, but specifically special operations. So there's a whole new world of education and training and getting, big bad guys with guns smart on how do they leverage the technology? How do they, what do they know about coding? What do they know about doing code on the fly? Layers and layers and layers of challenge. But again, our adversaries they're facing the same challenges that we are, and we can't go into specifics, but suffice to say that the U.S. has some capabilities too that we bring to bear. We also have some of those relationships that, we use allies and partners and others to deliver effects when we can't or shouldn't.
What's the force multiplier that technology brings to all of that you just described? And what's the best way to maximize that potential in your view?
Well, the force multiplier is that it can be injected from anywhere. It doesn't have to be on a military base. It doesn't have to be a place that you have to travel a long way to get to or have to have special access to get to. I mean, the computer systems have to have that level of protection and security. But that means that our forces that are always on the go, and they're often disconnected, can maneuver from whatever position they find themselves in the foxhole, to use an older phrase, I'll say. Definitely a force multiplier. Also, for training people, they don't have to go off to school somewhere for 6 weeks or 12 weeks necessarily. They could train from home, really, if the environment is secure enough. So lots of force multipliers there. And it's just the way of the future. It's where the way the world is going. So warfare has to go in that direction too.
Yeah, I'm going to put you back in the Pentagon for a moment, put you back in uniform. What would you want to make sure? Wow, you're very excited about that. What would you like to make sure that the men and women serving under you have from a cyber perspective in 2024, understanding what the landscape looks like today?
Absolutely, they need to have technology that they don't need to think about. They're not all trained in high-end technology, and even if they were, technology changes so fast, it would be impossible to keep the warfighters up to speed on all the latest, updates and just the technology innovations that are rolling off the assembly line like literally every minute. So letting them see success with, and trust is really the best thing that industry can do. And that's not just the technology, but it's the partnerships with the companies that provide the technology. I think that's something that we're having better conversations between industry and public sector and government leaders, but there needs to be more, because that's where that personal human to human trust is built. And when we have it, warfighters are more likely to trust that what we're putting in the cockpit, what we're putting in the submarine, what we're putting on the satellite is something that they just don't need to worry about, and it's going to be there and it's going to keep them safe.
You can read more about security and data at the Edge on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, DoD's small business strategy aims to drive faster solutions. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Dive deep into the latest advancements in maritime technology and defense. Watch Innovation in Government from Sea Air Space, available now on demand. You'll get exclusive insights from leaders at the Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard as they discuss breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and digital innovations. Don't miss this unique perspective on the future of maritime defense and technology. Watch anytime you want on the FedGov Today YouTube channel and at fedgovtoday.com, sponsored by Carasoft. Welcome back. The Defense Department is in year 2 of its latest small business strategy. That strategy includes 3 objectives. The first one is unifying small business related activities. Farooq Mitha is director of DoD's Office of Small Business Programs. At Soft Week 2024, he tells me he needs to coordinate efforts from everywhere in the department to achieve that objective.
Because one of the things that I've learned on this job, and from being a previous small business owner, is that it can be really confusing. So one of the things that I've wanted to do is to figure out a way where we can have better coordination and collaboration, not just from the small business directors, but also from other stakeholders that have a lot of business for small companies. So we set up a small business integration group, and that group is now meeting monthly. And we don't just bring in the small business folks, we bring in the industrial based folks, the innovation folks, organizations like AFWorks, NavalX, SoftWorks. They're all at the table because we need to do this together and make sure that we're messaging, coordinating, and reducing barriers to entry collectively.
Something you touched on there that's been the debate, subject of a lot of debate over the years, is what's the role for the traditional DIB folks to help bring those people into the defense industrial base, small businesses, cutting edge businesses, and so on?
I think they can play an important role as integrators. There's a lot of interesting capabilities and technologies we're developing through other transactional agreements, other prototyping agreements. And there's really an opportunity for our traditional primes to transition those capabilities into their systems and bring them on as subcontractors.
The second strategic objective is ensuring the department's small business activities align with national security priorities. Is that as simple as reading documents like the National Defense Strategy and thinking about how small businesses fit in, or is there more to it than that?
There's way more to it than that. What was really important to me in this objective was to make sure that our small business programs are sustainable, that they've got the authorization and funding they need. If we're saying as a department and an administration that we're open to do business with small companies, we have to have the environment in which they can participate and thrive. That's why I made sure that our Mentor Protege program at DoD was made permanent. We made statutory changes to it to allow for dollars from that program to go to the small companies. For the first time ever, we put the Rapid Innovation Fund, now we're calling it RISE, into the president's budget. That program has been unfunded since 2019. So if we want to open up the aperture for small companies, getting our program stable so they can then align with the national security priorities of the department is extremely important.
What kind of feedback do you get from those companies that say, we need this or that to be able to fulfill the vision that you talked, to be able to serve the department in the way that you're describing?
I think they've been happy with the progress that we've made, and they've been happy with the speed at which we're making progress. It feels slow to me as somebody on the inside, but getting a program that was a pilot program for 30 plus years made permanent, centralizing the contracting so we can award agreements faster, getting a program into the president's budget that wasn't funded. Those are heavy lifts, and I think that the small companies see that demand signal from us, and I think it's going to help us increase participation.
It strikes me that my takeaway from all the conversations that I've had over the years is that the challenges that you've been working on that are the biggest ones are embedding this into the acquisition process and the funding that you talked about. And I understand the funding now that it's kind of memorialized in the president's budget. What has been the work that you've done that you think has been most successful at embedding this process and these companies into the traditional acquisition process?
I think from that perspective, one of the most important things we've accomplished is some new guidance that came out from the White House on the rule of two and how it applies to multiple award contracts. We want to make sure that our small business professionals are involved in the earliest stages of acquisition planning. And while that has been happening in some agencies, including at DoD, it's been uneven. Now we're going to have regulations in the FAR that are going to make sure that from the earliest stages, our acquisition professionals are consulting with small business professionals, and that we're not forum shopping. Mm-hmm. If you're not going to set aside a requirement for small business competition, it needs to be documented, and justified. And I think that application of the rule of two is going to create more opportunities for small businesses, and it's going to create more on-ramping opportunities onto our multiple award contracts.
How do you measure that to make sure that the contracting officers are actually doing what the regulations call for them to do?
I think there's a few ways of doing that. One is we look at the data. Are we increasing set-asides, and are we increasing our spend? Are we getting more small companies onto our multiple award contracts? And we can track, I oversee the work of all of our small business professionals all across DoD. And we will be able to see, are they actually engaged where they need to be? So I think we can look at those factors and derive metrics from them.
All right, speaking of engagement, strategic objective 3, strengthening the department's engagement and support of small businesses. I alluded to that a moment ago with the question about feedback, but broadly, what are the specific steps that you've taken, and what kind of feedback has industry given you to say, this is working, this is maybe not working as well as it could, it's something that you should rethink?
Sure. So one of the things that I have done is rebrand what was formerly the PTAC program. We're now calling them our Apex Accelerators. That program moved from DLA into my office about 18 months ago. And the idea is to really have these 97 centers across the country be our field offices. So now we're leveraging them to engage companies, get feedback from companies, and really use it as a mechanism to share information on what we're doing and what our requirements are through these 97 entities, and using the data they compile to do better market research. Now, we did a Federal Register notice a couple of years ago to get feedback from companies on what we could be doing better. And that idea of a confusing defense marketplace was one of the most important things we heard about. But also impacts of policies like category management, uneven application of the rule of two, not having stable small business programs that they could consistently engage with. So all the things that we've been focusing on in those first two steps of the strategy are directly correlated with the feedback that we've gotten.
Mm-hmm. How would you judge your success a year out? We're about a year into this now. January 23, the strategy came out. But in another year, 2 years, 5 years, is it just the small business percentages, or what are the other data points that you'll look at to judge success?
Well, one thing we really want to look at is ensuring that we reverse the decline of small business primes in our industrial base. We've seen a 40% decline over the past decade, and last year was the first year that we slowed that decline down a lot. And that is the first step towards reversing that decline.
In awards or in number of companies participating?
Number of companies that are participating.
Understood.
So through these programs, through the ability of doing better market research, through some of the policy changes, our hope is that we can start to see a robust, diverse, domestic small business industrial base that can help us meet our requirements and make sure that we're not dependent on single source, sole source, or foreign sources of supply.
We have about a minute left, Farooq. What do you want to see happen in order to fulfill that vision beyond just the simple implementation and execution of these three objectives?
I think we have to do a lot more work in making it easier for small companies to do business with us and understand what the opportunities are and who to talk to. So we're working over the next several months through our Apex Accelerators to deploy tools that they can use when they counsel businesses to help them really get a better understanding of where they need to go for opportunities. It's really confusing, and even with the work that we've done, it's still confusing. So I think more forecasting, better access to information, consolidated information. There's a lot of information that small businesses could digest, but it's not in one place. So we want to centralize that and make it really easy for them to access those resources and tools.
You can find a link to DoD's small business strategy on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Fed Gov Today continues in a moment. Here's Conrad Maiorino, cybersecurity mission engineer at Zscaler, on innovation in government from Sea Air Space, presented by Carahsoft.
I think the DoD should follow their pillars, if you will, of zero trust, whether it's user, device, network, application, automation, visibility, analytics, and build what I like to call a cyber radar, or getting left of boom, if you will. When you understand this kind of data and putting it in place, as we said, you would understand the caliber of the load to take the adversary out, because you could see what's coming. That's where the DoD, in my opinion, needs to go, and I think they are going in that path. I think you're talking about a huge ship in a pond, if you will, and we got to turn that ship around. It's not as easy as everyone thinks.
For more, go to innovationingov.com. Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, one of the biggest government industry collaborations of the year is right around the corner. ACT-IAC will host the Emerging Technology and Innovation Conference at the Hyatt Regency Chesapeake Bay in Cambridge, Maryland, next Sunday through Tuesday, May 19th through 21st. The agenda's loaded with government superstars. You can read more about the lineup and register at fedgovtoday.com/events. A new artificial intelligence tech sprint's underway at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Donna Hill from the VA will tell you all about it on this week's edition of the Fed Gov Today podcast. The show comes out every Wednesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you get your shows. And you can always find it on demand at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching and have a great week. Here's Michael McCaleb, Vice President of Government Programs and Strategy at Carahsoft, on innovation in government from Sea Air Space, presented by Carahsoft.
And so there's some moves afloat that they understand that a college degree is important, but the direction that we're starting to see is that the credentialing is more important, is that taking somebody that has a particular IT skill, not a degree in computer science, but has been through the National Testing Center. The certification is more relevant to today's workforce. I think that the industry needs to pay a lot of attention of how they help young men and women coming out of high school, to energize them, to give them the passion, and of course the passion is self-generated, to get them into those programs. I've seen a significant increase in community colleges. We need industry to be inside the community college, helping the community college put the curriculum together to produce the nuclear welder, or to produce the person that's going to come on and run cables and do the installation of some very complex electronic warfighting systems.
For more, go to innovationingov.com.